Hi, John Kavakis here for another edition of My Take. Today we're going to be taking a look at GLM's 1962 Cadillac Sedan deVille in Maize. Now this is a hard color to find. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. But the Sedan deVille began in 1956, became a separate series in 1959 and 1960. The deVille series actually started with the Coupe deVille in 1949, and the whole series ran through 2005 when it became the Cadillac DTS. So the 59 and 60 were separate series. They had a new design in 1961. I mean, those 59s and 60s, they were just huge cars. They were beautiful, but they were huge. So they downsized them a little bit in 1961. Still a very elegant design, still very refined, still a beautiful car. They refreshed it a year later. It kept the skegs, which were kind of unique to Cadillac and Oldsmobile back in those years. But it came with in 1962, it came with a new roofline. And this was a four-door, four-window, pillarless, kind of a formal hardtop. Very nice look. The previous hardtops had 6 windows, and they were good looking too, but I just think the 62 was a beautiful, beautiful design. So you can get it with a 390 cubic inch V8, 16 valves, 4-barrel Rochester carburetor, 325 horsepower. The car did 0 to 60 in 16.4 seconds. I'm sorry, 10.4 seconds. Did the quarter mile in 17.6 seconds. That was respectable back then. Had a jetaway transmission, which was really a GM hydromatic transmission, but they had to have those rocket sounding names back then. It was a large car. So even though they downsized, still 222 inches long, 79.9 inches wide, and the scale on the GLM, by the way, is absolutely precise. So it had a sophisticated suspension and chassis. Engineering was advanced on it. I'll tell you something, and that was all really neat stuff to know back then, but the big thing you had to know about that, and I think it's hard to understand what Cadillacs were like back in those days unless you lived through it, because this was a Cadillac. It meant something when you pulled up in a Cadillac. It had prestige, it had an aura about it, and the people who drove them were obviously successful. They were the standard of the world since 1906, and Cadillac was very proud of it, and they did their name well, proudly as well. You know, so they kept it up to date on the engineering, but the styling was always the real attraction to Cadillac. And GLM's given us this model. You know, the Sedan deVille's been around for a little while. But when it came out with this Maize, I think because it was so emblematic of the time, such a right color for the time, it was almost an immediate sellout. Let's take a look at the model. We'll put it on the turntable and take a close look at it. And again, you might be somewhat familiar with this, but let me call out a couple things. Number one, the finish is absolutely beautiful. The detail work is stunning. The grille at the rear end of the hood is fantastic. The windshield wipers are incredibly delicate, as is the mirror. The separate door handles, the trim around the windows, very much to scale, very beautifully rendered. The spears on either side of the front quarter panels are exquisitely done. The grille, just a little work of art. The lensing in the headlights is incredibly realistic, as are the fog lights immediately below them. And here at the rear, it's just a beautiful rendition of the taillights and the bumper. The badging is microscopic but incredibly accurate, and they've done an equally fantastic job on the interior. In particular on the door panels, which are accurately rendered, as is the steering wheel and the dashboard. The gauges are legible. They did a fantastic job on this, and on this model, the wheels are just beautiful. They've got the correct amount of depth, the correct amount of texture. You know, that whether or not you like that wheel back at that time was a matter of opinion, but I just think that they have incredibly duplicated the look of the wheel and the white wall tires. So that's the model. This is Maize. I told you it was hard to get. When it first came out, it was almost an immediate sellout, but there's a friend of the hobby named Dave Gilbert. He does business as the Toycrgeek. He has a very limited number of these. If you missed it, you need to get a hold of him right away. I'll put his email up over here. You can also find him at Toycrgeek.com. He's also on eBay under the same seller name, and he also has a Facebook page. So it's an incredible model. It's something you'd be proud to have in your collection. If you want one, Dave has a very limited number of them. I suggest you get in touch with him right away. Hey, thanks for listening. I'll be back to talk to you again real soon.